Hi all, welcome to episode 61, the rental market in WA. And if those who watch regularly are wondering why I'm doing solo tonight. We've got a twist. I've got a new guest. And for those that are listening to our podcast tomorrow, you'll work it out as we go along. But to trusting all those people that you've all had a good week, and particularly those in New South Wales and Victoria, and we do have a few people that follow us and listen to us over that way. Hope you're all going well. We do think of how tough it must be for you all, especially if being locked down for this long. So thoughts with you, but hope you get some fun and some enjoyment, and also perhaps an understanding of what's happening here in the WA market. So tonight the focus is on the rental property, and as I said, we've got a guest, a bit of a twist, but a range of topics we want to talk about. And there was a really interesting piece, Landlords Exploiting House Crisis, was described as rent creeps. And that was a really intriguing little piece that people are taking advantage of the rental market and pretty much the tight housing market. It's well documented. The state government spokesperson advised they're adding more than $1 billion towards upgrading the state's public housing stock. I find that really intriguing, to be honest, because I haven't heard a lot about it, but we'll ask our guest a bit more about that. He might know. I spoke to someone the other day. The regional areas the rental market seems to be at a capacity. And some of those, including Broome, Busselton, Geraldton, and again, our guests will probably put a bit more detail on that with regard to what's going on there. Tenants facing the biggest rent hikes in 12 years, and there's been a fair bit of conversation and a fair bit of commentary and a fair bit written with regard to the rent market. So it's quite what we're doing tonight is more by good luck than good management, that there has been a fair bit of chatter over the last few days, in particular, regarding the rental property and what's going on. So we look forward to talking about that. The social housing benefits and also domestic violence has been the pressure on home. We'll chat about that. And places in Australia where I read where it's cheaper to buy than rent. We'll have a look at what that means. And of course, we have got OD stats. We always like to do that. And we've got a new segment. It's called What's on the Notice Board. And what we're trying to do with that, we'll tell you more about that later on. But the idea is if you've got something that you want to promote, be it the kids' school fete, be it something happening with the footy club, the golf club, whatever the case may be, tonight our notice board is going to go towards Wongan Hill. So look forward to that. And then, of course, we always finish. Oh, that's the other thing. We've got some great questions. We've got about 7 or 8 different questions. And funnily enough, come in over the last week or so, but we use them tonight associated about different rental questions and investment questions. And then, of course, always like we do, finish off with an if question. So look forward to your company. Hope you can enjoy us. But let's, without further ado, this is Property Avenue WA, and we'll quickly go to the disclaimer, which I must advise the information in this podcast is to be regarded as general advice, as is the live stream. Your personal objectives, needs, and financial circumstances were not taken into account when preparing this content. Oh, I can't believe I did that. We always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional, and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making financial, property, and investment decisions. And we emphasise every week, please ensure that you get assistance to assist for you for your specific individual circumstances. So important. I think that's all the little jobs we need to do firsthand. So I think importantly, we introduce our guest. This fella you probably see quite regularly, but what you probably are not aware, he's a bit humble about it all, but he started a new business a few months back now, Dedicated Property Management. He's now going gangbusters, but considering we're talking about the rent market and the investment property, why would we not, rather than get another guest, why would we not have him as our guest? So rather than be my co-host, I'm going to have him as my guest, and I'm going to be hosting the show. We're going to ask him lots of questions. And I can also tell you, with regard to what he does, you may have seen some of the posts, some of his reviews that he's had in a very short time, space of time, highlight how professional he is. But beyond doing his own thing, he still goes out and coaches other real estate businesses when it comes to property management. So Oscar De Souza, welcome, my friend. Great to see you. And now you're a guest. So you can't run the show. You are a guest. Welcome, mate.
Mate, great to be here, and thank you for that intro. It probably sounds, maybe it sounds a little bit better than what it actually is, but I just do my thing, TV, and I love what it is that I do, and I am very excited to be a guest of yours on the show tonight. Before we go any further, I can't believe you stuffed up the disclaimer again.
I know.
Again,
I'm
mate.
sure.
The word is content. It's not contact.
I know, and sometimes I call it contract, and it's not deliberate. Trust me. I just, for whatever reason, it's just playing on my mind. I'm saying, right, remember this, get it right. And before I know it, I've said it anyway. But, mate, we've got so much to do tonight. We really do. We've got a lot of content, and what I'm excited about is we've also got some fabulous questions. We've got a number of people. In fact, I had someone prior, probably about an hour before we went live, I had someone actually ring me with a question. Yeah. So it is people being proactive. And as I said, this is more when I spoke to you a couple of days ago, and all of a sudden I said, hang on, why don't we do something about the investment market, the rental market, bit of conversation. And all of a sudden, the last 3 or 4 days, suddenly there's been a lot of talk out there, a lot of media, a lot of social media about, and different posts put on the thing. So I think our timing's quite good, mate. We've been very, very clever. So there's a fair bit to do, but I think it's important. We're going to just hold off as a guest, although that probably does work. But we need you to do your little job, and that's OD Stats. But before we do that, a new little bit. Did you like that?
Oh, TV. As I said before, mate, some people have got too much time on their hands. I'm not sure if you're one of them, but I'm pretty sure you are.
I wish. Yeah, not really. Keep going. So, mate, what is going on? What is happening with regard to the world?
Mate, I'm going to give you the quickest stats report that I have ever done, and that is, and I've checked the stats, but look, it's very, very consistent to what we've seen all year. That being, we've got a very, very strong sales market, almost 850 to 900 transactions again in the last week in Perth. It's been that for the best part of the year. So there's no slowing down in the sales market, and if anything. One thing that I have noticed is that listings have actually started to decrease a little bit in the sales market. So most of the real estate agents have been reporting that there's just not as many buyers coming through. The offers aren't as many as what they were, but we're still recording the exact same number of transactions. So there's definitely the activity. And the bit that really does surprise me, though, is especially during these winter months, is that our stock levels are actually getting a little bit lower. Normally during winter, things slow up a bit, and then we really crank up in the after winter, which is what's known as the spring selling season. But as I said, the stock levels already seem to be tightening up, and that's just what the stats are saying, which I could only think that come spring, and if we can fast forward 2 or 3 months away, come spring, I think we're going to have a rip snorter of a spring selling season here in WA, not just Perth, but the rest of WA. Movement in the rental market, and I'm sure we're going to touch on that a bit more over the show. But there definitely is a bit of movement in the rental market. And by that, I mean, I think the FOMO has actually gone out of the rental market. We've seen stock levels increase. So it wasn't that long ago that we only had about 2,650 rental properties through Perth. But now that figure is almost bang on 3,000. So it's actually increasing stock of around about 12 to 13%. But don't get me wrong, there's still lots of people coming to home opens. For every property that I lease, lots of applications, really good quality applications. So it's not a quiet market, but it's just quietened off from where we were earlier this year. But we'll expand on that a bit more in the show. And the Geraldton market as well, there's a little bit of a softening in the rental market. A few weeks back, there was just over 40 properties available in the whole of Geraldton. And as at today, there's 67 properties available. So it's quite a sizable increase percentage-wise, but you talk to any property manager or you talk to any person looking for a rental in the Geraldton area, and they'll basically tell you that there's nothing around. So it's a very, very tight rental market still, but it has softened a little.
Hey, we may as well move into that from your stats and to what we're here for, and it's about the rental market, and there's been a fair bit of chatter, as we say. But the regional market, and we'll go to the regional market because you're mentioning Geraldton, for example. But as I mentioned it in our brief little promo that we did on Monday night, I spoke to, or got a message from one of my friends down Busselton Way, and they've got 14 properties available for rent. There was an article there about Broome I saw recently, where their rental market is at capacity, and the reasoning for that, suggesting there is sea changes, and people are looking for a change. They're going in different directions, and obviously Geraldton we already know, Busselton we know. Is that the same thing that's occurring, say, in places like Kalgoorlie? Are they experiencing similar pressure on the rental market like the other regional areas?
Yeah, they are. They are, TV, but I reckon that they're actually for different reasons. And there's a number of different reasons why there is this pressure on the rental market. All of it does relate to supply, though. If the supply is down, and that's what we've seen consistently for the last 12 months, with the supply being down, that always means that there's going to be competition for the few rentals that are out there. One thing that we haven't really touched on, though, is that with our sales market across the state that has been so buoyant, there's a number of people that have been looking to capitalise in terms of being a seller, make sure that they can sell during this really buoyant market. But there's been a reluctance for some people, not all, but for some people to actually buy in the same market that they sell. So the theory there is that what they'll do is they'll sell and try and get a really good price for their property, but then they'll decide to rent for maybe 12 months, and because they think that maybe the market's a little bit overheated. So if they rent for 12 months, if things go to plan for them, then the market, that heat will come off the market. Maybe it'll even actually drop back a bit if this is really just a bubble. And then they'll be able to buy at a lower price than if they had bought at the time that they sold their own property. So that's just another factor that places a pressure on our already pressurised rental market. But like you said before, there's the sea change idea. Low migration for obvious reasons because our borders are shut, and they're getting more and more shut by the day at the moment. But then there are people coming in for work because we've got a bit of a mining boom going on here in WA, and when there's a mining boom, that actually places a pressure on other employment areas of the economy. So if you've got more miners around and you've got more employment in that sector, that means there needs to be more food and beverage, there needs to be more entertainment, there needs to be more sport and cafes and dancing classes and aerobics and all that sort of stuff. So there certainly is a bit of a spin-off there.
Yeah, and what I have noted too with regard to our rental market, you say about employment, and there's obviously people that are going, well, we need to be in WA because of our work. We can't live in Queensland or New South Wales or Victoria and come out and fly over like they used to. And so that's got to put pressure on our regional areas in particular. I'm sure it puts pressure on our city, our metropolitan as well, but it obviously puts pressure. People are probably perhaps going to try and live closer to their work if they've got to. And for example, if you want to live in Geraldton and you want to fly north to work, you've got to fly to Perth and then fly back over Geraldton to get to Port Hedland. So in some cases, you've got people either going to live in Perth or alternatively live up north where their work is and rent up that way. So I suppose that's got to put pressure on the rental market as well.
Yeah. No, mate, it all does. I just had a thought and it's just flown straight out of my mind. So I won't even try and catch that thought back. I'm sure it's going to... that's what I was going to say. I was going to make a general statement about this rental market, though, because as we know, it's been it's been really, really hard going for renters for the last 12 months, maybe 12 to 18 months. But then earlier on this year, we had that lifting of the rental moratorium on evictions and rental increases, and that really spiked the rental market. And we knew it was going to happen. There was no surprise there. But I think to the tenants that were in place, I think there definitely was a bit of a surprise for them. What was I going to say? So far as the rental market is concerned, and I'll expand on this a bit later, I think we've probably seen it get as hot as what it is going to get for this current cycle. I've seen now an increase in supply. I know that we're going to touch on rental increases later with some of the questions. And I also foresee that over the next 5 to 6 months, I actually see the supply in rental housing increasing, because a lot of that builders grant stuff that was the construction sector stimulus during or as soon as the initial COVID shock happened, a lot of those builds are actually starting to come out of the ground, and certainly will towards the end of the year. I really think that's going to improve the supply of housing, whether it's for owner occupiers, but also in the rental market, and that is going to increase the level of supply than what we've currently got. And as I mentioned, we've already had around about a 12 or 13% increase in supply. I can actually see that supply increasing a bit further. So I think that real heavy pressure on the rental market has done its dash, and it's not going to get worse anymore.
I mean, you say that about the building, but then of course you read and hear commentary. And in fact, I saw I think a couple of weekends ago in the real estate section of the West Australian, where they were actually pleading to people to say, look, be patient. And there was suggestion that in some cases, there are people that are a long way away from where they're expecting to be when it comes to their house being finished. And I think if my memory serves me correctly, there was some suggestion that you're going to be all of a sudden 2 or 3 years away. Now, you talked about these people in cyclone, where they've been damaged from cyclones, and then you've got the Wirraloo issues, but now you've got these people that are waiting to move into their new homes. That's got to put pressure on the rental market, because they've got nowhere to go. They've got a rental property, and they're relying on their home. Not everybody's in a rental property that's building, but there's a fair percentage. There's a fair percentage.
Yeah, no, that's true. Those stats where they're talking about 2 to 3 years to build a home, obviously that doesn't account for the properties that are under construction and have been for the last 12 months. No. I still do really think that there's going to be a bit of a spike in supply, not to an oversupplied level, but right now we've had a pleasant, almost relieving spike in supply, which I think is actually a very good thing, because it solves some of this homelessness problem that at the start of the year we really didn't have a solution for. So to now see that we've actually got a slight increase in supply, I think is a really good thing. And I actually think as we approach the end of the year, that supply will increase. Mate, you just touched on Wirraloo. I only heard in the media, this is completely off track, I only heard in the media this week, because I think there's a trial going on right this minute, that the Wirraloo fires were deliberately lit.
No, I don't think that was quite true. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, it was to do with I think that there was a guy with a tool, what do you call it, an angle grinder? I think I haven't read it properly, but I think here we go. I've got it here. Police claim man using angle grinder set off devastating blaze.
Oh, so therefore, not deliberate. It was an accident, though.
Yep, an accident from an angle grinder being used to open a shipping container started the Wirraloo bushfire, which destroyed 86 homes and has so far cost insurers nearly $100 million. Right. 5 months after one of WA's worst ever bushfires, I won't name the gentleman's name, who was allegedly using the grinder, was slapped with 2 criminal charges which could put him in prison for 15 years.
Wow.
Yep.
Right. Okay, look, I mean, it sounds like that's unintentional. It sounds like it's an accident, which is a far better outcome.
Trying to remove a padlock, but unfortunately, I think the issue was that he was doing it at a time when that sort of equipment was not permitted, and the daytime temperature they were saying was something like 38 degrees with easterly wind gusts that just it was the wrong thing to do, basically.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, mate. We completely digressed.
I know, but that's okay. But we get back to the building side of it and what you're saying. But then, of course, what the issue is not so much the builders. I mean, the builders are busy, of course, but their other issue, and this is what Warren Taylor from Warren Taylor Homes said a few episodes back, they can't get supplies, timber and things like this. That's the issue. And, of course, then you've got lockdowns. It's, I'm waiting for something very simple to arrive. I'm not expecting that to happen in a hurry, because I think with lockdowns, it's going to put that sort of stuff behind by a few weeks, I reckon. And that can't help the situation. The ongoing thing that I see with the building side of it, and then of course the rental side, it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. Hey, the other thing that I was really intrigued about is getting on about the rental increases. And there's a number of questions. What I want to do tonight is ensure that we discuss the rental, but I think some of the questions will add to our conversation. So we'll probably change our format a little bit to ensure we don't miss out on these questions, because a lot of people have taken the effort. But the rental increases with what they're suggesting, are they as bad as what they're made out to be? I mean, there's a headline there that landlords making hay while Perth tenants cop 16% rent rise. I was sort of, and then you and I know you tagged me in a something on social media the other night, and I read all those comments, and everyone's some are rational, some are irrational, but you can understand the passion on either side of the fence because the pressure that's on people. What's your observation and what are you experiencing as a property manager?
Look, as a property manager, I'm still experiencing high demand for any property that I put on the market for lease. It's just a one home open, and I'll lease every single property after one home open. There'll be multiple people coming through, and just like the last 3 or 4 that I've leased in the last fortnight, each time, because people are so keen to secure the property, they'll even offer a bit more than the asking price. Not at ridiculous levels, but they will offer a bit more than the asking price. So there definitely is that level of demand out there. One thing that I would say, and I really do want to set the record straight with this, the media does sensationalise what's going on in the rental market, and particularly the more victim type stories where people are either getting evicted or the huge rental increases that they can't afford and all that. Now, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that there are not genuine cases out there. I absolutely get it. And there's people that have had reduced hours because of lockdowns, and there's affordability issues and all that. So I 100% get that. But there's a lot of abusers of the system, I guess, out there, or there's a lot of people that, poor me type stuff. The reality, and so, I have to call it how it is. It's a bit unfair for the media to grab hold of a number of stories that there's probably the second or maybe third side to that story, which doesn't make for a good story anyway. So, the media won't really report on that side. What I do know is that it has been a landlord's market over the last 12 months, but the 5 years before that was absolutely not a landlord's market. And the media didn't really spend any time at all talking to landlords about the fact that their mortgage rates were up. Costs continued to go up, but rents continued to go down. Because that's not really newsworthy. It's a bit hard to sensationalize that. And there's always the argument of, well, if you're the investment property owner, if you're the landlord, you can probably afford it. So now the coin's on the other side, or the shoe's on the other foot. And as I said at the start, there's many genuine cases out there, TV, and I really do feel for those people, and particularly when it comes to things like homelessness. But yeah, there definitely is two sides to the story, and for 12 months, the landlords have really had it on their side.
Yeah, and I was interesting when you read that post in the last couple of days, whereby there were landlords that responded to that article and responded to those and saying, well, I've had a regular client in there. It's a bit like what along the lines of what we've been saying. You know, sometimes you're better off, and I think a lot of landlords are like that. They're better off retaining a good tenant, maybe a slight increase, because let's be fair, costs are increasing anyway. And as you say, in some cases, the landlord's taken a smack. But that's the way it is, and unfortunately, it is what it is. But it's interesting with that article that some of those landlords were saying, "Hey, I'm not one of those, and in actual fact, I'm sort of managing, doing what we need to do, and looking after a tenant because I've got a good tenant." I've certainly been like that in my cases, I believe. I no doubt that I've increased, but I haven't gone anywhere near what I've been advised I could get. And I think there's a lot of people like that. There's going to be greedy people, and there's going to be people. Yeah. Remember that some months ago now, one of their article where someone was asking for something like $2,000 a week. Remember that article? It was someone up north, I think it was. Yeah. You know, so you're going to get those people that are just going to be, that's what it is. And because it's difficult, if you've got a landlord like that, then maybe you need to reassess what you do, because that bloke or that person might have difficulties getting a tenant in the future if they're not going to look after people.
Look, I think, TV, I have not got one single landlord that I work with or people that aren't my landlords, but I still talk to them. I don't know of one that is looking to try and screw every last dollar out of the tenant. Because at the end of the day, if the landlord only looks after their best interests and tries to get absolute top dollar, but that's unaffordable for the tenant, it's not going to end well for the landlord anyway. So most landlords, and certainly every landlord I see or I deal with, number one, are human. Most of the time they're Australian. They've got the whole Australian blood in them, and they don't want to see anyone doing it too tough. There's one thing to do it tough, and everyone's had a go at doing that, but doing it too tough is certainly not the way to play the game. So I've had many landlords that won't increase rents, even though that they would be in their rights to do it. I've had landlords that will increase rents only a little bit, but like a far cry from where they actually could put it up. And then I have had some landlords that actually revert to what the current market is. But in every single case, it's in the best interest of the landlord. Well, every case that I'm aware of, it's in the best interest of the landlord to retain a good tenant, as opposed to forcing someone out on the street and then go looking for a new tenant. Most of the time, the landlord will be looking to retain their existing tenant.
Just looking at this, there was on ABC Online, Perth's median rent jumped 16.7%. And that's not overnight, that's over a period. While Darwin rents skyrocketed even further up, 21.8%. That's the median rent. So that's not everybody's rent. And Canberra remains the most expensive city to rent, $620 a week, with Adelaide the most affordable, $430. They lifted sharply in Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra and Hobart, up between 7 and 9%. But interestingly, Sydney and Melbourne, not the case. But of course, the issue there, which was identified, is that they're relying on the international market, so international students, etc. And of course, that's not happening. So those apartments and things like that. Whereas in WA, as we expressed before and you explained, our not only the sea change, but people over here for work, that's having an impact on our rental market. And whether we like it or not, it's all about supply and demand. It's the same. And when petrol goes up, do we jump up and down? We don't do much about it. It's just what it is.
Mate, I did jump up and down the other night. A couple of nights ago, I went to fill up my wife's car, and I looked at the price, and it was $1.78 or whatever. And I was looking at it going, when did that happen? And I was so caught up in my own little frustrated emotion that I filled it up going, $1.78, I can't believe I'm doing this. And when I went to put the Bowser back on the handle back on, whatever it's called, the pump back on the Bowser, I realised I'd picked up the 98 octane one, the most expensive one anyway, and that was an extra 20 cents a litre. Extra 20 cents a litre. So instead of paying $1.78, I paid $1.98 anyway.
Well, my little
smart
car has that. So whenever a Jew says, "Oh, the fuel's only $1.30 or $1.20 or whatever the case may be," that might be true. But for my little car, it's probably going to be about $1.60, $1.70. Fortunately, it's only a little tank. Hey, the other thing that I was
sorry, can I just go back? Can I just go back one step? What did you say is the most?
You're the guest.
What did you say is the most expensive city to rent in? Did you say Canberra?
Yeah, no, Darwin.
Oh, Darwin.
Oh, no,
Darwin
no. Tell it. No, you're right. Canberra remains the most expensive city to rent. That's the medium price. Okay, $620 a week.
That just really surprises me.
I find that a bit interesting.
What's in Canberra?
Well, probably some wealthy politicians. I don't know.
I bet.
I don't know. So the other thing that, coming out of all this, other than that as well, is that the pressure that's putting on the rental market. There's some articles that have now gone one step further, where it was described in one of the headlines, "Sex for rent sleaze." Did you read that? Did you see that? So people have been renting; they're obviously taking advantage. And now they're going to do something about it. But I found that really, and I went and checked the papers, and that's real. That's not hysteria. There were articles in the paper, adverts in the paper, offering rooms and accommodation. And of course, when people are desperate, you talk about landlords. There's a classic example that. People are desperate, and that's the sort of stuff that's going on. It was that was quite scary. But I've since read that they are now where are we? They are going to do something about that, but and they're already pursuing that in no uncertain terms, which so they should be. But that's scary. That is scary that people are going to that point. But of course, there are people responding to that.
Mate, I must admit I didn't read the article. I think I was at IGA and I walked past the headline on the West Australian, I think it was. But no, I didn't read it. It's absolutely the first that I've ever heard of it. I hope it's the last I ever hear of it, because that's, we're not talking dollars and cents anymore. Or we're not talking a carton of beer or something. I'll throw in a carton of beer if you get the deal across the line. We're talking about something completely different, and something that's either humane or maybe it's even inhumane. And I'd be really saddened to think that tenants would need to go to that length to get themselves a roof over their head.
Well, now I understand there was a further news article where they are now urging people to victims of sex for rent, as they're calling it, schemes, to come forward because they're considering it as a form of sexual harassment. I would have thought it's a bit more. I would have thought it's a bit more than that, but anyway. But from that, when I read that, what was really, really intriguing is that they went and explored this further, and the opposition, who I have organised an email to the opposition housing minister, and I would see if we can get a comment from him. But there are still something like 17,000 households still on the social housing wait list and homelessness in Perth alone. But what intrigued me, that's Perth and Fremantle, but what intrigued me was the reference that they're saying that the $20,000 building bonus grant will assist, etc., etc. But then this government spokesperson then said that there was more than $1 billion going towards upgrading the state's public housing stock. Can you, being in the field you're in, can you tell me, have you heard or seen any such reference or any such news or any such information as to when and where this $1 billion is being spent, and in how and why? When?
No. Short answer is no. I mean, $1 billion is just a incredibly outrageous figure. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even if it is that much, it's too much, too late. This is something, and I think the housing crisis, as I mentioned, is going to sort itself out over the next 6 months, or maybe 6 to 12 months, without that level of investment. But it's so hypocritical, TV. The government should have thought about this 12 months to the day. We had just come out of this COVID period, and they had money to spend. They had houses that could use the work. They had workers that could do the work on the houses, and that would have put roofs over people's heads. And I can't for 1 minute think that our industry bodies like our Real Estate Institute or any of the other housing associations would not have been talking to our state government departments, letting them know that would be a very good use of state funds. But so the fact that they'd come out now swinging the big $1 billion bat, it's pretty pathetic, mate, to be honest with you.
I just find it staggering that we've got a situation like we have 17,000 households, and you've got no one's prepared to. Kim McDonald from the West Australian, who always does it, from my observation, obviously there's a huge amount of research when it comes to real estate and housing things, and so she's the one who wrote the article, and she's quoted the housing minister. Or quoting the state government spokesperson, and you'd sort of think, gee, I hope she follows that up and to clarify exactly what's going on there, because that's just, I find that just, there's not a word being said. You would think if you're going to do something of that nature and that stature and that sort of money, you'd be out there blowing a trumpet, and yet not a word has been said other than this little snippet that was in this article that Kim had written in the West Australian. So I just find that staggering. That such. No, it wasn't Kim. It was Brianna Fior. So it wasn't Kim, but I think she instigated the initial conversation. Anyway,
our state election was only around about 4 months ago. I think we're July now, so it was 4 or 4.5 months ago. And right up until the government had won the state election, housing was not even on it didn't even cop a mention. And then as soon as the government, and the McGowan government is, so far as COVID is concerned, it's a bit hard to, I think it's a bit hard to point a finger at. I think they've done an amazing job keeping WA safe. But only after the election was won did housing get a mention, and that obviously was in line with the termination of the rental moratorium on rent increases and evictions. And at that time, we were going to go from a rental crisis into a serious rental crisis, which of course is exactly what happened. But that wasn't spoken about at all prior to that March election, or Feb, whenever it was.
And still nothing being said. We've got this consistent commentary, be it on social media, be it within the newspapers and on TV, and yet not a word is being said that I've seen. And I keep a very close eye on a range of different articles. I like my articles.
You do, don't you?
And I watch the media, and I scan through all the different. I've got different newsletters that I get thrown to me. Not a word, nothing. And I would suggest.
Well, the only word is. The only word that keeps getting touted is this $1 billion budget, but what is that? I think they're trying to keep everyone quiet with the overwhelming nature of a $1 billion budget versus actually drilling down into the detail a bit more.
Go and tell the 17,000 families that are sitting there homeless. I mean, I just really struggle with it.
No, it's not that they're homeless. It's not that they're homeless. Like those people aren't that. Like they're just on the state housing register because they need accommodation. But it's not that all of those people are homeless.
No. But what I'm saying is, go and talk to those people that are whatever their position is. There still are a lot of homeless. There still are a lot of people under a lot of pressure. and
Yeah.
it needs to be addressed, and yet there's very, very little being said in any way, shape or form when it comes to a government representative standing up and saying, hey, they're quick to tell us all the stats about COVID. They're quick to sit there in front of the TV when it comes to all that stuff. I'm a bit over it, to be honest. I'm just about drained.
Yeah. Hey, TV, give us some more questions, mate. I'm looking at the time. We need questions.
Okay. So I will give the questions. I know. Yeah, and stay trying to run the show. I will go to the questions because they're in part of our conversation. Hey, TV, I'm guessing this may be a question for Oscar. I'm renting a property at present. However, I'm concerned about all the talk above about rent increases. At this stage, I have not been contacted about an increase. When would this happen? And I'll combine this with another question because another question similar. Hi, TV and Oscar, can you tell me when I should contact my landlord to check with him as to my rent? I'm concerned I will get a sudden increase without warning.
Okay. So just on just on that second question in terms of rent increase without warning, that just can't happen. The Residential Tenancies Act does not allow a rent increase without warning. In most cases, there'd have to be a 60-day notice if there's going to be a rent increase in most cases. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so in most cases, there does need to be a 60-day notice. If I was a tenant, I wouldn't be pressing my property manager or landlord and asking them when I might be getting a rent increase. I'd probably sit back and wait for them to approach you for a rent increase. And bearing in mind that maybe there won't be a rent increase, because if you've been a good tenant, you've done the right thing. If the market has leveled off a little bit, maybe you are paying the right rent. So that's my thought there. And just going back to the first question, look, rent increases, it depends on a number of things. It depends on whether your existing lease in place actually allows for a rent increase, because some leases, there might not be a provision in the lease to allow for a rent increase. On the basis that it does, sometime in the next 3 months or 6 months, then dependent upon what rent you have been paying and dependent upon what the current market rent is for your property that you're renting, maybe there might be a rent increase justified. But as I said, it would need to be justified. You can't just pluck a number out of the air. You can't just go from $450 a week to $550 a week because you think so, because the tenant does actually have the right to dispute a rent if they believe it's unreasonable. So it's not a very common thing that I come across, because, as I said earlier, most of the time the landlord is wanting a good tenant and a rent that is affordable for the tenant. So the other thing that I would say as well, just my prediction in terms of the current market where we're at and where I think the next 6 months are going. Of course, we've had rental increases, particularly since the termination of the rental moratorium, which was at the very end of March this year. And the reason that we had such a significant spike in rent was, number one, natural market forces over the 12 months since COVID. But number two, with the government placing a rent freeze or a rent increase freeze for 12 months, plus we had a lot of demand for rentals. Never in my lifetime can I actually recall when the government has artificially interfered with what the natural market would do. So come the end of that rental moratorium period, it was a no-brainer, especially with the demand that we were seeing. It was a no-brainer that we were going to see, increase in rents, and that's exactly what happens. I personally think that most of that pain has now gone. Most of those rental increases probably would have been negotiated, and over the next 6 months, I certainly don't think we're going to see that level of rental increase that we have in the first 6 months of this year.
Yep. So again, that gets back to what we've been saying, that perhaps some media commentary is a little bit sensationalising, and therefore creates this angst and this passionate, landlord bashing, if you like, in some cases, when it's really not necessary. Yes, there's been a bit of an increase, but that's not quite the case. Hi, TV, listen to you guys quite often. I have a property I rent privately, got an issue with the tenant as he has consistently, now I've spoken to you about this prior, the tenant, as he has consistently advised, he is paying the rent, the arrears, but it is now 3 months arrears and nothing. What can I do, as I really need to evict him, as I'm retired and the income helps with my retirement?
Well, that's certainly, I'm thinking at the start of the lease when this particular tenant took on the property, they must have understood the agreement and they must have understood the terms and the rules of the agreement. And now, according to the information I've been given, it doesn't sound like they're keeping their end of the agreement, which largely is paying the agreed rent. So on the basis that there is a lease agreement in place and the landlord has followed the terms of the Residential Tenancies Act, the normal protocol would be to issue a breach, especially if we're 3 months down the track, to issue a breach to the tenant, and then very quickly move to a termination after that. And if they're not responding to any of the notations that or any of the communications that you're giving them, ultimately you file a case with the local magistrates court, where that communication cannot be ignored because it is via the court. And you basically go and discuss the matter in front of the magistrate. So both the tenant and the landlord would need to discuss the matter and try and resolve it. And in this case, if the tenant doesn't turn up and does attempt to ignore the magistrate's communication, the magistrate may be in their rights to actually just order termination immediately and provide the landlord vacant possession. And that might even mean that a bailiff would need to come out to the property and physically escort the tenant off the property. So that's not a pleasant experience. No one wants to see that happen. But if a tenant is ignoring all other communication and is 3 months behind in the rent, and you can't see this situation get better, I don't think the problem will get better. I think there's only one way that you'll be able to fix that.
What sort of time frame would that take? I mean, you've got a person who's already out of rent 3 months, then you go through those processes. What would be the estimated time frame for that at the moment?
Look, I would have thought somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks, TB.
Basically, he could be out of rent. Yeah, he could be out of rent for another month, at least.
Well, he's not renting. He's not really renting, but he would be able to occupy the premises for for maybe another month before he'd actually get a heavy hand that says that he either needs to pay the rent or he will be evicted from the property. Yep.
Okay.
One thing I really should point out. One thing that a landlord can't do is that they can't go back to the property, change the locks, demand the keys back, or physically try and take possession of the property back. They absolutely cannot do that. That's breaking the law. So you have to actually go via the legal process. If you've given your property to someone and with consent allowed them to live at the place or rent the place, you can't physically just go and take it back. You have to do it as per the law. And in the case of a residential tenancy matter, you must go to the magistrate's court.
And going back to the original conversation or earlier tonight, that's the classic example. What you say is that, it's all very well to say jump up and down about the landlord's increasing, but there's an example where a landlord is doing all the right things and then suddenly is out of pocket, but his processes are quite restricted. And so therefore this landlord may never get any of that money plus the money in advance. He's limited to what he can do because there's a process. So, there's two sides to every story, isn't there? And that's a classic example that you can jump up and down about the landlord, but look at the issues that the landlord has. And I suppose the other thing that I see here, unless you really know what you're doing, unless you're really confident what you're doing and you've got all your ducks in line, that's an example where maybe you might be better off with a professional property manager than trying to do this sort of stuff yourself.
Well, I would have thought so. Look, and like anything, TV, you get what you pay for, and if you don't pay for anything, you probably won't get anything. Whether it's property management or appointing a real estate agent to sell your property, whoever it is has to be able to demonstrate the value that they can add. In the case of property management, for a couple of $100, $200 or $300 a month, or whatever it might cost you, or let's say it's $3,000, $3 or $4,000 a year to have your property professionally looked after by someone that deals in rentals day to day, who knows the terms of the act, who knows the processes that you need to go through, who's going to do the inspections, who's going to lease the property for you, who's going to take all that worry away from you, and you're engaging a professional. From my point of view, I think it's worth its weight in gold. And it, particularly when I hear of situations like this, and for example, I've just been appointed to look after a property in Winthrop, and this property is 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, easy $900, $950 a week, something like that. And I've picked it up on the back of a horror story in terms of the 6 months that the landlord had prior to that. And when I say horror story, I mean the tenant might have paid their first couple of weeks rent and bond when they first went in there, but that's where it stopped. Then after that, they complained about maintenance items. They never paid any more rent. In the end, 3 or 4 months later, they did a runner on the property. The owner couldn't get them out, and they left the place one hell of a pigsty. So that was just a classic case of a landlord trying to do the right thing. And we're not talking a $250 property out the back of nowhere. $900 a week, and it's a substantial property. It pays to get someone who knows what they're doing and is doing it day to day. But at the very least, educate yourself. Do some homework yourself, because if you're trying to save a couple of bucks on the way in, it'll cost you so much more on the way out.
Yep. Just noticed, got a couple of questions. I'm looking at time madly. Hi guys, learned a lot from you both. Have learned a lot from you both. Moving to my new home as a first home buyer. Property was tenanted. Does the property manager follow up the cleaning and addressing the issues with the tenant before I move in? Bit concerned if a problem arises, who is responsible? Thanks a million. Actually, didn't say thanks a million. He said thank you.
Yeah. That's a really, really good. Thanks a million. That's a really, really good question, TV. It ultimately depends on the way that the contract is written, or rather the sale contract is written, because sometimes you can buy a property and it might have a tenant in there, and after you bought it, after settlement, the tenant might be in there, and then 2 weeks later or a month later, then you might get that property back, for yourself as a first home buyer. Or you might buy the property on the condition of vacant possession, which means that the tenant would need to vacate the property before you actually get to settlement. But if your purchase of sale contract is not specific as to what condition the property needs to be in at the time of settlement, you could run into a bit of strife. It could be a bit of a grey area. The norm, and I think what most people would be after, is the tenant would move out, the property manager would go in there, complete what's known as a final bond inspection, make sure that the tenant has returned the property in a similar condition as to when they were given it. And then when the buyer or the first home buyer comes along, they're going to be presented with a pretty clean and tidy property, which is what they'd expect. But again, most of the time that is the intent, and most of the time that's what will happen. But I have seen situations where that didn't quite work out, and the reason being is because the contract wasn't actually clear enough. So again, really worthwhile getting some advice to make sure that the conditions of the contract are in line with what your intentions are.
Hi guys, keep up the good work. Love the banter, but also the information. Got a rental question for you. I have a property that I'm about to rent out. He actually says renting, but to rent out. It's in a complex and there are strata levies. There is a pool available for use for all the units. The strata levies are a little high, but I've been advised it's due to the pool Can these levies or part thereof be charged out to my tenants as are the ones using the pool?
Good question. Answer is no. You can't pass on the strata levies. You can't pass on, in a residential property, you can't pass on the building insurance or your shire rates or your water rates or anything like that. The outgoings of the property, inclusive of strata levies, rest with the landlord. And that's all there is to it. So, and yes, the tenant does get the use of the pool. If it was a house that had a pool, then there is an alternative arrangement that is normally the case that happens with the pool, and that is that the landlord might look after a regular service of the pool, but typically because the tenant is using the pool, the tenant often will be invoiced the cost of the chemicals, which it's not going to be much, but that's the consumable side of the pool because the tenant is using the pool. But when it comes to a strata complex and any pool maintenance items are covered within your strata fees, no, you cannot pass that on to the tenant.
I suppose in a way they've built that sort of catering within your rent, I suppose, in some ways. Depends how you offset your rent with your outgoings. Anyway, that's another question for another day. And I've got two more. Hey, can you guys tell me what the rules are for security systems? The complex we're in has what they call a fob, which allows access to the building and car park. We're wanting spares. However, the landlord has advised any extras would be our cost. I'm assuming what they're saying extras, they mean if you want a spare fob, then it'll be our cost. Does this sound right to you?
Yes, it does. And the same goes for this. Like if whatever fobs you get given, if you lose a fob or damage a fob, then that cost would be to the cost of the tenant as well. So it's one of those things that property managers, they need to keep their own set of keys and fobs. So if the point of having spares is just in case you lose one or you lock yourself out or something like that, well, often you'll have the property manager as an avenue for the unfortunate circumstance if that happens. But if you just wanted to have spares for the sake of it, I think it would be absolutely a logical thing and a reasonable thing that you would need to pay for the same.
And this question, I got a phone call about an hour before we went on live. In fact, I got a phone call regarding this question. Should rental amounts be restricted or capped for existing tenancy? In other words, what they're saying is protecting the tenants or the individuals that are already existing rather than dramatic increases. But I think you've already really answered that, haven't you, with regard to the leases, and you can't have any dramatic increases, although, you know, that's what it sounds like in some of the media talk. It doesn't work like that. You can't just go and whack someone because you feel like having an extra $150 a week.
No. You can have a dramatic increase, but what you can't have is an unreasonable increase.
Yep.
So you can't just pluck it, like, you know, you can't go from $450 a week, which is pretty close to the market, where a landlord just says, oh, well, I want $700 a week now. So no, it doesn't work like that. But if a current rent is dramatically below what the current market rent is, sometimes there can actually be quite a dramatic increase, but it just can't be unreasonable. The only question, so in terms of that, TV, no, I don't believe that there should be a cap on rental increases. The market needs to do what the market needs to do, and if ever there was going to be a cap on rental increases, it would need to work the other way as well, and that being that there'd have to be a cap on, or what's the opposite of a cap? There'd have to be a floor on rents in terms of how low they could go. But I'm pretty sure the tenants would be up in arms about that, and the media would be all over it if we suggested that when rents were going down, that the landlord was allowed to maintain it at a certain level. So it would need to work both ways.
Yep.
And it never would.
I'm just looking at the time, but one thing that I did want to make mention of was the I'm not sure that I mentioned this before, but I read this article where the landlord I read an article where the landlord went and pitched a tent Did you see that? Where a
Yeah,
landlord
yeah,
in the backyard?
yeah.
And then they complained to the tenants who were renting the house that they get their car out of the driveway because it was blocking them and they couldn't get access to their tent. And apparently it's a bit of a stalemate because there's no one can find the actual ruling with regard to, although they're saying you tenanted the place to these people and therefore you don't have a right to but apparently there's a clause in there somewhere where they'd have access to the back yard of the property, I read somewhere the other day.
Yeah, so again, the devil's in the detail there, TV. Normally, when you rent a property, you're renting the entire property. You don't just rent the house, you rent the entire property, which includes the front yard and the backyard and all that, unless there's something specifically in there that says that you're not renting the back shed or you're not renting the backyard or something. But yeah, the devil would be in the detail.
Hey, listen, have you got anything else to add to when it comes to the property market and the rental market that you've observed or you'd like to add a bit of something? Just looking at the time.
Not really, mate. The only thing that I would say is that I think the worst of the rental market horror stories are over. Homelessness, the position of homelessness should get better, as in there should be less homeless people moving forward. I think
there's $1 billion there, mate. There's $1 billion out there. Don't worry.
Yeah, $1 billion. Yeah, that'll sort it out. I think the crisis, the worst of the rental crisis has definitely passed us. And I think that we'll move more towards a sustainable and amicable level, certainly over the remainder of this year. It's still busy out there, TV, in the rental market, but the worst of the crisis is absolutely behind us. Great to hear. Really appreciate that. Now, hey, listen, got a new segment. Are you ready for it? Oh, yeah. It's called What's on the Notice Board? Yep. What's on the notice board? And what that's all about. We thought I had this brainwave last night for some other reason. I was working till quite late and I thought, I'm doing something on my whiteboard. And I said, you know what? A notice board. So the idea of the exercise, and I've already got a couple, but the idea of the exercise, if you're listening out there, I don't care who you are, what you are, whether you're in business, if your kids have got a fete, you've got a golf competition happening at your particular golf club, or you've got a particular thing you're doing with your business, you might be doing a fundraising exercise or something special, let us know and we will pronounce it. We will announce it and that will go on What's on the Notice Board every week. So that's our new segment. What a great idea, TV. Fabulous idea.
Get people that if you've got there, share it around What's on the Notice Board. And I've got something for What's on the Notice Board for this week. Our first edition of what? Yeah, I have. The Wongan Hills 4-Ball Better Ball Open this weekend. If you want good food, amazing hospitality, a cold beer with a few of your mates, okay, it's sand greens, beautiful sand greens. Okay, don't get cute. It's like golf. Saturday, Wongan Hills 4-Ball Better Ball. Boatman Machinery, the boys up there, they really do. Sadly, I was all ready to go. I was rocking and rolling, and then I did my meniscus, so I had to pull out. But Jo listens to our show quite often, and she sent me through the details. So it's a running draw from 11 o'clock to 11:30. Entry fee $30 per person, lunch and dinner provided, and trust me, food to die for. You won't even want to go and play golf after you eat the food. Magnificent homemade soups. I can tell you. Full range of trophies, lunch and dinner provided afterwards. That's all for your $30. But it gets better because after you play Saturday, you then go out on Sunday and play a 27-hole stabled event, which is the Wongan Hills Golf Jenkins and Herman Cup, which is a great event, lots of fun. The course is really, really good. That's on Sunday. Names in by 8:30. Tee off at 9. You play 9 holes. Then you stop for lunch, and again, a beautiful spread's put on. All the ladies do this amazing food. And then you have dinner. Then you play the next 18 holes. Then you have dinner, beers and that are out there. Thousands of dollars worth of trophies, $30 a person. And, mate, if you don't have a good time, you have got a problem. So if you're out there and you want to do something,
sounds like a cracker.
It's a great weekend.
Great value for money. But I can see why you're so disappointed that you can't go, mate.
Yeah, I know. It's a great weekend. But the other thing about what's on the notice board, do you know what tomorrow is? Do you know what tomorrow is?
Wednesday.
Wednesday the 21st. Wednesday the 21st of July, and Wednesday the 21st of July is none other than World Junk Food Day.
Is it?
Yes. World Junk Food Day. World Junk Food Day. I can't go into it because I've looked at our time, but my if question on the back of that is, if you were a junk food person and you were going to celebrate World Junk Food Day tomorrow, what would be on your menu? Where would you be going to have your favourite junk food tomorrow?
KFC.
Oh, me too.
I don't even need to think about it, mate. KFC every day.
I'm a KFC man, and I haven't had it for about 3 years, but I might be tempted tomorrow. But I thought I would do a bacon and egg wrap tomorrow. I'm not sure where I'd get that from, but that's what I'm doing for breakfast for my junk food day. I'm going to have
KFC.
No, I don't know where. I remember getting one some time back. I haven't had junk food for donkeys, but anyway, I'm going to go and I'm thinking a Whopper for lunch at HJ's, and then KFC for dinner. Then I get on the exercise bike.
Each of the 3 meals.
Yep.
Each of the 3 meals, right? Okay.
Yep. So there's me if question, mate.
So you doing it?
No, I couldn't imagine. I might go and sneak out some KFC. I'll see how I go. I'll feel horrible afterwards. Hey, listen, really appreciate. I know we sort of play around the fact that you're our guest tonight, but once again, always appreciate what you can contribute, and particularly when it comes to property management and understanding the rental market. So fantastic. I hope everyone got some value out of that. It's been a bit of fun. Don't forget, next week we will be doing it all again. And we will certainly have what's on the notice board again next week. We'll have OD stats, and we'll have a few other things. There's a few little snippets that I want to do, but I'm just looking at the time, and oh my God, we have so much fun, and it just gets away from us. So, mate, thanks a million. Enjoy Junk Food Day tomorrow, and look forward to doing it all again. Stay safe. All those people in Melbourne, Sydney, or wherever you may be, if you're listening to our podcast,
Adelaide.
Don't forget Adelaide. Send or accessible via Instagram, Facebook page, and also Twitter. So you're accessible any way you like. But really hope there. And those that are going to Wongan Hills, have a great time. And someone just said to me, you're on your own with your junk food. I think it was my wife. Right, got to go.
TV.
Oh, pleasure, mate. I look forward to doing it again next week, eh? But as the co-host, not as a guest.
Yeah.
Take care. Did you notice the little intro that had your little skip on it as well? Did you see that?
You still